Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Dave. I'm a full-time RN, full-time husband, father, part-time reseller, mostly on eBay. I decided to add some extra content to my reselling channel, and I'm going to tell some true stories that happened to me or I was there back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. 100% true, nothing embellished, just real stories. These stories are not incredibly bizarre, newsworthy, earth-shattering stories, but they are funny, amazing. Some are really gross, nursing stories. So I thought people would be interested in seeing these stories. I tell these stories to my friends and family at gatherings, and they seem to enjoy them. Other people seem to like them, especially around the water cooler at work. So I'm going to make these videos. I'm going to call them Midwest Picker Stories. These stories kind of paint a picture of what life was like in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So these stories are also for educational purposes only. Please do not try this at home. Life back then was much different. No homeland security. Legal matters were much different. The names of any people in these stories have been changed to protect their privacy. If you want to know why I'm doing these in detail or who I am in detail, look below the video in the description. So let's get into the first story. So back in 1981, I was 15 years old, freshman in high school, and I was taking driver's training at the high school. I was so pumped. I was super excited. I couldn't wait to get driver's training done and over with, get my permit, and then when I turned 16 the following January, that day on my birthday, I was planning to go get my driver's license at 16. I was so excited. Here's an actual picture of me in the 9th grade. Now you have to remember, this is 1981, no smartphones, no flip phones. People didn't walk around with cameras, so photography was kind of rare back then. Film was expensive, but some student took this picture of me, and I don't know the story behind this, if it was homecoming week or whatever, but literally this is the only picture that exists of me at this time in 1981. So my high school had this sponsored driver's training program, and they had two sets of cars, and this is important. They had the old used donated cars for driver's training in the parking lot, driving around cones, learning how to parallel park and how to back up. And then there was donated new cars from some local dealership, and these new cars are the ones that have that special brake pedal on the passenger side, so that the instructor sits on the passenger side while some nervous kid drives out on the open road on the highway and whatever, and in an emergency the instructor can slam on that extra brake pedal. So this day I was with a group of kids that were going to be using the old used cars in the parking lot, driving around cones and whatnot. Now these used cars were just your typical early 70s used cars donated by people in the community. We had Oldsmobile Cutlasses and Chevy Chevettes. We didn't have anything cool like a Camaro or Corvette, but just your typical old early 70s cars. And there was one car, a very early Cadillac Fleetwood, probably a 71 or 72. This thing was a land yacht. It was massive. And me and a few of my friends were like, yeah, we want that car. That car's cool. I mean, we can fit so many people. This car, you could fit 6 adults comfortably. Big bench seat in the front, big bench seat in the back. The other cars were okay, but we kind of eyeballed that one, and when the instructor said, okay, everybody get in a car, we beelined it right for that big old Cadillac. So they would divide the students in half. Half of the poor kids would have to get in those new cars with instructors and hit the open road. This is day one. They don't know how to drive, so we were lucky. We were with the group that were going to drive in the parking lot in the used cars, so I was really thrilled. I did know how to drive. I mean, my dad let me drive since I was 14, so I was used to how cars worked, but I really didn't want to go out on the open road just yet, so because I was in the group for the used cars, we were even more excited. So me and 4 other kids, we jumped in the Cadillac. Some nervous kid was behind the steering wheel, the instructor was in the passenger seat, and me and 2 friends of mine jumped in the back seat. And the instructor went through the usual, you know, how to start the car, put your seatbelt on, how to put it in drive. And this poor kid, he's all nervous, you know, and he's rolling like 3 miles per hour. And the instructor's like, all right, go down there and, you know, go through those cones, and then we'll teach you how to back up. And so, I mean, the car's barely moving. So me and the other 2 guys are in the back seat just kind of enjoying the show. So this Cadillac had a white leather interior and red carpet throughout, so it was pretty gaudy. So while this poor kid was trying to drive through the cones and do his thing, me and these other 2 kids were in the back seat. We're just horsing around, making fart noises, telling jokes, ribbing each other, looking out the window. The instructor didn't seem to care. He probably thought this was a good idea to be a distraction to see how this kid driving would handle the distraction. And the instructor didn't care. He wasn't listening, and we're just goofing around, super immature, making jokes. So as the Cadillac kind of lumbered around the parking lot through the cones, and we're in the backseat horsing around, one of the kids in the back seat got really serious. And he suddenly his face got real serious. 15-year-olds don't often get serious. And he said to me and the other kid in the back seat, kind of in a hushed tone, he said, "Hey, did you guys know that this is the death car? Did you hear that legend? That we're sitting in the death car?" He said, "Some rich family donated this car to the driver's training program because they didn't want it. Because somebody was murdered in this car, and they said, I don't want it, get rid of it, and that's why they donated it." That's what I heard. I didn't believe him. I looked at him, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And I looked at the third kid, and he's like shaking his head. And we just looked at him and said, dude, that's an urban legend. That ain't true. There's no way. The school's not gonna accept a car that somebody was murdered in. Come on. The kid telling the story got really serious. And he kind of looked at the instructor to see if he was listening, and he goes, no. There was this guy, he was shot in the head in the back seat of this car right where we're sitting. So the story goes from this kid that the family, you know, cleaned up the mess in the back seat as best they could and didn't want anything to do with the car, so they donated it to the program. I thought, there's no way. That's crazy. So as this kid continued with this urban legend, and he was filling in details and what he thought he knew or heard from somebody else, I'm kind of looking around. Notice that the white leather seat, you know, it's got the typical grooves and cracks and details in the white leather like a lot of cars back then did. And I kind of stood up. Now, we're small. I mean, we're freshmen. We're 15 years old. I mean, I'm, you know, 110 pounds soaking wet. I could easily stand up in the back seat, and I turned and looked below me. And the white leather in the creases and cracks, it was like a dark brown stain that was all in those creases and cracks, kind of like somebody cleaned the seat but they couldn't get into those cracks. And I thought, that's a little weird. I'm an RN now, so I know old blood will turn like a really dark red or brown color if it just lays out for too long. But I looked at it as a kid and I'm like, that could be dirt, it could be old food. That doesn't mean anything just because the seat is a little dirty. So after this kid was done telling the story, we started looking around the car for clues. We're looking at the ceiling, we're looking at the door handles, and I'm on the right side in the back seat, and the kid telling the story is in the middle, and the third kid's on the left. I look up at the back window, right where I'm sitting, and right in the top corner is a bullet hole. And I was like, what the heck is that? Now, it could be a hole from a rock, but I took my pinky and I reached up, and yep, I could stick my pinky right through that hole. And it looks to me, I'm not an expert, I'm not a gunsmith, but it looked like the size of a bullet hole, and I could put my finger right in it. And it was a clean hole, it wasn't all shattered or anything. But I thought, okay, that's kind of weird. It's like right here. This is all starting to kind of paint a picture, maybe why there's a legend or an urban legend, because somebody saw the hole in the window and they just made up this story. I don't know. So the clues were starting to add up, and this kid says, hey, look at this, and I'm like, hey, look at this, and our faces kind of turn white, and it's like, we're starting to put clues together. This is getting a little uncomfortable. The instructor totally ignoring us. He don't care what we're talking about. Kid is still driving around and backing up and doing his thing nice and slow. And at this point, the kid that was driving, I don't know what he was doing, but he hit the brakes too hard. and the car kind of lurched to a stop really hard. I don't know if he almost hit a cone or what. And the three of us in the back seat, we kind of fell forward and fell back. And I noticed, or we all noticed, when that happened, the seat that we were sitting on lifted up in the air and slammed back down. And we all looked at each other and we're like whispering, this seat's not connected to the car, it's loose. So after the car started driving again and the instructor's paying attention to the driver, we all, in the back seat, we all look at each other and we whisper, let's lift up the seat. I want to see what's underneath this thing. So again, this is a land yacht. I mean, it's a massive car. So the instructor's not paying any attention. The three of us, we stand up on the floor of the back seat, turn around with our butts towards the front of the car, and we reach our hands into the crack where the seat meets the backrest, and we put our hands in there and we lift the seat up, and it's completely disconnected. And we lift it up and we peek down and we look down. So it's red carpet, and we're all looking and checking it out, and I kind of look to the left where I was sitting, and there is a massive stain in the carpet, like a dark brown 3 foot by 3 foot stain right below that window that had the hole in it. And it looked to me like a massive blood stain that somebody missed, and it was right there, and it was gross. So we lowered the seat in total silence. We were trying not to scream or freak out, and we turned around and kind of just sat down, and we're just nervously waiting, like, when is this car gonna stop so we can get the heck out of here? So as soon as the car came to a stop, we flew out of that car. We just jumped out. I don't even know if we were supposed to. We ran out of that car. And there was kids milling around that were waiting their turn. We ran up to this group of kids and we're like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. Did you hear the urban legend? Do you know that's a death car? This is what happened. And we explained the whole thing of what we found, the bullet hole and this blood stain and all that. And their eyes were like saucers and they were like, what? So no kid from that day would go into that Caddy. They're like, no, I want to go in the Cutlass. I want to go in the Chevette. No, I'm not going in that car. Looking back on that story, thank goodness it was during the day. Could you imagine if it was driver's training and they wanted us to learn how to drive at night or even at dusk when it was kind of creepy looking outside and that happened? We'd probably have a heart attack and die. So I'm interested to know what you think. Put down in the comments down below. Do you think that was a murder car? Do you think that urban legend is true? Or do you think it was something else? Did somebody, I don't know, spill coffee in the car? I don't know. The clues kind of add up. We're not really sure. I never found out if the theory was true, but man, it really seems like somebody was whacked in the back seat right where I was sitting. So that's the video, guys. This is my very first Midwest Picker Stories video, episode 1. I hope you liked it. If you know anybody that likes weird, bizarre, funny stories, gross stories from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there's a share button down below. Hit that share button, send this video to somebody that you know likes weird, crazy, gross stories. I got a lot more coming. I got about 35 total stories. I'm not sure what I'm going to do when I'm done filming all of them, but it does take a lot of time to film this and edit and all that. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you for the support. We'll see you next time.